Hello everyone, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel, The Return Card. So I was recently tagged in the 52 Neat Bookish Questions tag, originally done by Adrian from Strip Cover Lit. In fact, he was the one who tagged me, which, surprise, surprise. But this is just 52 kind of straightforward questions, and I thought, why not, even though I'm drowning in other tags that I still need to do. But we're just going to get on started. I will be linking the original tag in the description below. So the first question is, what book are you currently reading? And it really should be books that I'm currently reading. I'm juggling 4 at the current moment in time. The first one is Sula by Toni Morrison, and I'm doing I decided on this one for the Blackathon, but I also wanted just to read a Toni Morrison book. I don't think I ever have before. So I'm reading that through the Libby app on my phone. The second book that I'm reading is A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinley, and this is a Alice in Wonderland retelling. The next book that I'm reading is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. This is actually going to be for a series that I'm doing. We'll see when I get to actually filming that bit, but it's a really thick boy, so we'll see how that goes. The fourth book that I'm reading is A Flight of Broken Wings by Nupur Chowdhury, and that is pretty much a fantasy set where Ariels and humans are fighting against one another. Number 2 is, what was the last thing you highlighted? Now, I'm not much for highlighting. I do notations in books, and I do tab with sticky notes. So I do tab with sticky notes. This is just one. Like, I had gotten a whole box of just sticky notes galore. So the last thing that I notated, the last thing that I tabbed was in Infinite Jest, and I actually tabbed it because it was more kind of disturbing because of who the character was, and I won't explain it too in depth further, but the last sentence I had was, some of Mario's thinking faces are almost orgasmic, fluttery, and slack. And because of how old that character is in this book and at that time, that's kind of weird. Just say it. Number 3 is, what do you plan to read next? And I have a few different books that I'm planning on reading. Like, I still have the Langston Hughes Reader that I plan on continuing to read throughout this month. I read Cora Unashamed, and there's a couple other... I want to read all of it, really. So, the Langston Hughes Reader is one that I'm planning on finishing. Then there's also Pride by E.B. Zaboy, and the Prose Edda. Number 4 is, one fiction writer, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink. I could more tell you who I have grabbed drinks with, kind of. I was at this Halloween party with Lauren C. Defoe. She wrote Implanted, and she's a very, very nice person. I also was at a Halloween party and mingling with Scott S. Phillips, who he does independent indie books, but his are really good as well. So I don't know, all the same people I have been going to parties with. Number 5, one non-fiction writer, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink. Bill Bryson. He just seems really fun. Number 6, one poet, living or dead, with which I would like to grab a drink. T.S. Eliot, as long as only we talked about pets. Number 7, one booktuber with which I would like to grab a drink. I don't know if I could just pick one, because there's a couple of booktubers who I've gotten to know fairly decently, and for example, are who I feel kind of closer to than others. Like the other Winchester, I would totally grab drinks with. Amy Gets Lit, I would also grab drinks with. Number 8, Emily Dickinson or Edgar Allan Poe. As far as poems I've memorized, Edgar Allan Poe, but as far as poems that I like a little bit more, oddly enough, Emily Dickinson. Like, her poems are shorter, but yeah, no, I'd go with Emily Dickinson just to hang out. Edgar Allan Poe, if we're just talking about poems and impact that they've had on me. Hemingway or Fitzgerald. Scott Fitzgerald, mainly because I actually remember the things that I've read by him. Hemingway, it's been a very, very long time. I've read Hemingway back in my late teens, early 20s, and that was many, many a year ago. So yeah, Jane Austen or Charles Dickens. I like Jane Austen's writing style a little bit better. I think it just flows a little bit more naturally for me. But I heavy respect to Charles Dickens for everything he's done. Harris or Hitchens? It's been a long time since I read Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens. But if I remember right, I liked Sam Harris's writing style a little bit more. I think Stephen King or Michael Crichton. I like the movies that have come out of Michael Crichton's books more, but I like Stephen King's writing style a little bit more than Michael Crichton's. Bret Easton Ellis or Chuck Palahniuk. Now, I did not know who Bret Easton Ellis was, and then I looked it up, and it's the guy who wrote American Psycho. I've never read any of his novels, so I'm going to go with Chuck Palahniuk just based on that default. Kurt Vonnegut or John Green. I like John Green, and I especially like more his YouTube series, but Kurt Vonnegut Kurt Vonnegut. Sorry, John Green. Shakespeare's poems are plays. I would read Shakespeare's poems over his plays, but I would definitely watch Shakespeare's plays. Number 16, Adrian Fort or Dalton Gentry. I'd have literary discussions with Adrian because I think it would be fun to argue or rather see, where the similarities or differences are. But I would totally hang out with Dalton any day of the week. We would so go to the casino together. Number 17, Cormac McCarthy or J.K. Rowling. Now, given that the only book by Cormac McCarthy that I've read is The Road, which I didn't particularly like, I'm going to say J.K. Hannibal Lecter or Voldemort. I feel like Voldemort represents that extreme evil thing, like trademark at the end, where he's not particularly believable because he's so on that extreme loss of humanity, kind of evil without purpose. And Hannibal Lecter is, I'll kill you because you're rude. So I feel like I would be more terrified of Hannibal Lecter because who knows why I would piss him off and he would string me up and then eat my brain. T.C. Boyle or George Saunders. I don't know who those are. 20, good writing or good story. I feel like you can't really have one without the other in a lot of regards, but I would go with good writing over just purely like a potential plot, because I think that's what it would be at that point. If you have a good story, then it's just a good plot potential, but that it's not really lending itself to a good, narrative or scene, setting, all those other things. So yeah, I'll take good writing. YA or children's lit. I read more YA than I do children's lit. I'm actually trying to change that though. So YA just because that's what I read more so now than children's lit, but I would like to read more children's lit in the future. So irony or humor. I think I could live with humor without irony, but I think irony is a form of humor. So I'm just going to go with humor. Sci-fi or horror. Sci-fi all the way. All the way. Fantasy or nonfiction. I don't think these should be categorized together. So I'm going to go with, that kind of kills me a little bit on the inside. I love fantasy. If I could read fantasy all the time, I would. And I probably, I say like that, like I can't read fantasy all the time. But what I mean is if I only had one genre to read, it would be fantasy. But I think nonfiction books are essential. So while it kills me to say it, nonfiction over pure sci-fi. Fantasy. Number 25, rather find a new favorite contemporary writer or a new favorite old-time great. I would go with new favorite contemporary writer just because they would be publishing newer works, and the potential for the works that they could be publishing out are, I think, greater than someone's already portfolio of writing. So I'm going to go with new favorite contemporary. Sonnet or haiku. Sonnet. Nothing against haikus. I think they are really good, but sonnet. Sestina or Villanelle. This is probably going to lose me some peeps, but I don't know what those are. I'm going to go with Sestina just because I think it sounds prettier. Number 28, spend the evening at a library or a bookstore. The library. Hands down. Number 29, magazine or Wikipedia article. Wikipedia article just because of accessibility. 30, dictionary or encyclopedia. Dictionary, with the accessibility of everything that we have. And I mean, you could say that with the dictionary too, but I think dictionaries just lend itself to be a little bit more useful in this current time. If you had asked me, Years ago, it was some encyclopedia probably. Number 31, the writer I would like to write my biography. Someone with humor. And who would lie about my life. Number 32, I do not highlight in my books. I don't highlight in my books. I tag with little sticky tabs. Oh, sorry. Number 33, I do not write in my books. I do with certain books. So, like, I have Infinite Jest, and I've been writing in there, so that one doesn't have a lot of writing in it. But, like, I make notations and stuff in certain books. I don't do it with all of them. Number 34, earliest memory of a library. The earliest memory of a library that I have is actually the library called the Esther Bone Library, and that is in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. My parents and I moved, my family and I moved to New Mexico when I was 10, and so that was the library that was closest to the apartment complex that we were at, and I was there constantly. So that's the earliest memory I have. Number 35, when was the last time you went to the library? I went to the library last month, and I just kept rechecking out the books that I checked out there. Number 36, have you ever stolen/accidentally stolen books from the library? No, but I have lost books from the library, so I've paid them back, though. Number 37, ballpark, how many books do you own? I think I have about 300, and it would not surprise me if I come across another box full of books that I didn't know I had. So, yeah, about 300. I feel like I'm on the lesser scale of books owned than a lot of peeps who have been answering these questions. Number 38, how many books do you think would make for a reasonable personal library? And I'm actually going to steal an answer from Jaguar Cat Lit because I thought hers was fabulous, and that's 100,000 because I really like that answer. 39, so there's Sense and Sensibilities and Sea Monsters, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, etc. How do you feel about the phenomenon? This phenomenon actually started years ago. I think 10 years ago. I remember reading it in my early 20s for the Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. So I think it's fine. I think parodies and changing things up is really great. I do think sometimes you have to change certain plot elements in those kind of stories in order to actually make it work if you wanted to make it work. But if you just want it more for the gag, then it doesn't really matter. 40, horror trope you would like to see get more love. I would like to see, monsters that are a little bit less known. So certain fairies that are in Irish fairy lore are Wendigos. I don't see nearly enough stories about Wendigos in books, and I think they need to get a little bit more spotlight. Number 41, something that you think gets underutilized in sci-fi. Oddly enough, phones. So oddly enough, I don't see nearly the use of communication devices in sci-fi other than kind of walkie-talkie-ish. So I don't really see smartphones or smart tablets in sci-fi nearly enough, I think, nearly enough. I just don't think they get used nearly enough for how much people use them now. They should have their time and place in a sci-fi novel, but they're not. And that confuses me. But anyway. 42, flash fiction. Form of and format of literature. R is just a short story dummy. I've just been getting into reading flash fiction, and most of it has been Twitter flash fiction, so I don't know if there's a certain word type. I think I heard in another video it's up to 500 words, but heck if I know. So I think it can be a form of literature. I don't know if it would be considered a form of literature now. I don't necessarily consider it a full story as it is right now. I think some might be more than others, but for the most part it's not. A lot of them seem just like a scene within what could be a bigger short story or novel. Number 43, if you can own one book from all of history, what would it be? I'd say just at least one book from the Library of Alexandria. There you go. 44, audiobooks, the same as reading. Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about reading as far as getting the story. So are you getting the same information? Yes, you're getting the same information whether you do it audiobook style or with your eyes scanning the page reading style. So yeah, it's the same. Number 45, most literary songwriter of your lifetime. I don't know his name, but I think the guy from 21 Pilots, he does a pretty good job. 46. What writer embarrasses you the most because you haven't read them? No, I'm not embarrassed by writers that I haven't read, but more if there's a writer who I think to myself, I should be reading their work, or I should have read their work by now. Probably Mercedes Lackey. I pride myself on being a fantasy reader, and I still haven't read a single Mercedes Lackey book. So, or Brandon Sanderson. I haven't read a Brandon Sanderson novel either. 47. What writer embarrasses you because you've read too much from them? There's not really a writer I feel I've read too much from. Number 48. What is a biography you are looking forward to reading? I've been hearing a lot about Michelle Obama's biography. I don't read biographies very often, so there's not really one that I feel like I need to read, but I guess, yeah, Michelle Obama's, just because people have been talking and saying it's really good. Number 49. Do you have a dream reading cubby? The world is my reading cubby. I read everywhere and anywhere. So no, I don't really have a dream reading cubby. Anywhere just really comfortable. So if I could get one of those couches that all come together in like the square and it's kind of like this nest of cushions, probably that. Number 50. Last literary phenomenon that really got your gears grinding. So I'm guessing this is like Peter from Family Guy's like, you know what grinds my gears? There's not really too much of anything that grinds my gears. If there's a book that has a certain trope or phenomenon in it, but it's the style that I like, then I don't really care that it has that phenomenon in it. So there's not really one I can think of off the top of my head. Sorry, dude. Number 51. What was the last piece of literature that changed the way you read? I can't really remember. I changed the way I read when I started going to college for an English degree. So, you change what you look for after you do like analysis of certain things. So sometimes I can't just shut off like that analysis piece. Number 52. What booktuber have you been watching the most recently? The same people I'd get a drink with. The other Winchester, Amy Gets Lit. I've been watching Strip Cover Lit because they've been posting very, very often, and I feel like they do things that are different from a lot of other booktubers out there. So primarily them. So that's my 52 Nifty Bookish questions tag video. If you like this video, please give it that thumbs up button. If you like seeing my face, by all means subscribe. And also, if you feel like doing this tag video, by all means please do so. It's a fantastic little get to know you, I guess, thing. But as always, may get lost in a book.